You don't have a learning problem, you have an applying problem. Think about it, you finish a book, a course, a podcast, and within weeks it's gone. You've skimmed, saved, maybe even highlighted, but nothing has changed. Confucius solved this 2,500 years ago with one simple rule: having learned, practice it at due intervals. This wasn't a poetic saying, it was a system. A way to turn fragile facts into muscle memory, and memory into mastery. And today, we're bringing it back. 10 Confucian habits to make your learning stick for life. Let's begin. Principle 1. Practice at due intervals. We live in the age of the collector's fallacy. We collect information like rare coins, saving articles, stocking up on online courses, amassing a library of unread books. We mistake this acquisition for learning. But to Confucius, this was empty. True learning wasn't about what you acquired, it was about what you assembled through practice. Let's break that down. The pleasure, the joy, isn't in the initial hearing. It's in the repetition. It's in the doing. And most importantly, it's in the due intervals. This isn't random practice. It's deliberate, timed, and rhythmic. The Confucian anchor, the art of ritual, Li. For Confucius, this wasn't just a study tip. It was an extension of Li, often translated as ritual or proper practice. For him, rituals weren't mindless routines, they were the structured, repeated actions through which we cultivate virtue and embed wisdom into our very bones. We don't practice a ritual once, we practice it at due intervals until it becomes part of us. Learning was no different. The practice was the learning. The why, the neuroscience of spaced repetition. Centuries later, science caught up. We now know Confucius was describing the most effective learning method we know of: spaced repetition. Cramming information fires a few neurons. But reviewing and applying that knowledge at strategic intervals, those due intervals, forges robust neural pathways. It moves knowledge from the temporary holding tank of your short-term memory into the deep architecture of your long-term memory and muscle memory. That feeling of something becoming second nature. That's the pleasure Confucius described. It's the feeling of knowledge becoming instinct. Modern, everyday applications. This is about moving from being a passive consumer to an active practitioner. The online course taker. The collector's method: you binge watch 10 hours of a coding course over a weekend. You feel productive. A month later, you remember nothing but the overwhelming feeling of it. The Confucian method: you watch 45 minutes of the course. Then, you close the video and spend the next 15 minutes, your due interval, doing. You write the code yourself, you break it, you fix it. You don't move on until you've tried it out. The pleasure comes from seeing your own code run. The language learner. The collector's method: you cram 50 new vocabulary words with an app on your morning commute. By evening, you've forgotten most of them. The Confucian method: you learn 15 new words. That afternoon, your due interval is to write a short, silly paragraph using them all. The next day, you try to use 3 of them in a real conversation. The pleasure comes from the moment you're understood. The leader learning a new soft skill. The collector's method: you read a book on active listening and agree with all of it. The Confucian method: after a chapter, you choose one technique, like paraphrasing. In your next 3 meetings, your due intervals, you make it your sole goal to paraphrase what someone says before replying. The pleasure comes from the surprised look on a colleague's face when they feel truly heard. The toolkit for deliberate practice. 1. The learn-apply cadence: structure your learning in blocks. For every 45 minutes of input, mandate 15 minutes of output. This is non-negotiable. 2. Schedule your intervals, don't leave practice to chance. If you learn something on a Tuesday, put a 15-minute practice appointment in your calendar for Wednesday and Friday. This systematizes due intervals. 3. Define the try it out. Before you even start learning, ask, what will trying this out actually look like? If it's history, it's explaining the event to a friend. If it's Excel, it's cleaning a real dataset. Have the practice ready. Practicing at due intervals transforms learning from a noun into a verb. It's the difference between owning a recipe book and knowing how to cook. The pleasure Confucius speaks of is the quiet confidence of mastery. It's the deep, satisfying joy of seeing your knowledge work in the real world. It's how you stop collecting ideas and start building character with them. Principle 2. Warm the old to know the new. In our relentless pursuit of the new, the next hack, the latest trend, the undiscovered technique, we make a critical error. We treat our past learning like yesterday's news, something to be archived and forgotten. We become intellectual nomads, constantly moving forward but never building a home for our knowledge. Confucius saw this flaw in his own students 2,500 years ago. His solution was a principle that seems counterintuitive to our modern, forward-charging mindset: review the old, learn the new, and you can be a teacher. This isn't a suggestion to live in the past. It's a command to use the past to master the future. The Confucian anchor, the cycle of wisdom. The original Chinese phrase, 文古西行, is richer than review. It means to warm over or revisit the old, and in doing so, to understand or perceive the new. For Confucius, knowledge wasn't a linear path but an upward spiral. You don't leave old lessons behind, you return to them from a higher vantage point, with new experiences, and see deeper layers of meaning you were blind to before. This cyclical process of revisiting and refining is what transforms a student into a master, into a teacher. The why, the neuroscience of memory reconsolidation. Modern neuroscience explains the power of this. Each time we recall a memory, we don't just pull up a static file. We actually rewrite it, a process called memory reconsolidation. When you warm the old, you are not just reminiscing. You are actively pulling an old memory or idea out of storage and re-encoding it, now fused with everything you've learned since. You're not reviewing the old idea, you're upgrading it. This is how insights become wisdom. It's the biological basis for that aha moment when an old concept suddenly solves a brand new problem. Modern, everyday applications. This is about turning your personal history into your greatest intellectual asset. The project manager. The nomad's method: after a project finishes, the report is filed away forever. The next project starts from scratch, repeating the same mistakes. The Confucian method: before kicking off a new project, you spend 20 minutes warming the post-mortem report from a past, similar project. You don't just read it, you ask, based on what we know now, what would we do differently? How does this old challenge inform this new one? The old review becomes a strategic lens for the new work. The creative professional, writer, designer, artist. The nomad's method: you create a new piece, put it out into the world, and immediately chase the next idea, never looking back. The Confucian method: you maintain a digital garden or a commonplace book of your old ideas, half-finished sketches, and abandoned paragraphs. Once a week, you warm this archive. An old sketch ignites a new campaign. A discarded line becomes the theme for a new piece. The old is not dead, it's compost for new growth. The lifelong student. The nomad's method: you take a course on philosophy, then a course on physics, then a course on coding, storing them in separate mental silos. The Confucian method: during your physics course, you actively warm the concepts of causality you learned in philosophy. You see Newton's laws through an Aristotelian lens. This integrative review doesn't just help you understand physics, it deepens your understanding of both subjects. You start making connections no one else does. The toolkit for integrated review. 1. The weekly, Wengu, session. This is non-negotiable. 20 minutes each week. Open an old notebook, a past project file, or a folder of saved articles. 2. Ask the connective questions, don't just reread. Interrogate the old material with new eyes. What does this old note remind me of that I've learned recently? How does this concept challenge or support what I now believe? What problem am I facing today that this old idea could help solve? 3. Maintain a connections journal, a simple document where you formally record these links. On date, I reviewed old idea, and it helped me understand new problem by connection. This document becomes a map of your intellectual growth. The takeaway: warming the old is the antithesis of passive consumption. It is the active, deliberate work of integration. It is how you build a unique perspective that cannot be copied, because it is the sum of your entire learning journey, constantly being refined and resynthesized. Your old notes are not a graveyard. They are an armory. And each week, when you warn them over, you are sharpening your weapons for the battles of tomorrow. This is how you stop being a perpetual student and become a true teacher of others, and most importantly, of yourself. Principle 3. Pair study with reflection. Our modern learning landscape is dominated by two equally dangerous extremes. On one side, the endless, passive consumption of information, binge-watching, skimming, and scrolling without pause. On the other, solitary, ungrounded brainstorming, thinking in circles, disconnected from the wisdom of others. Both paths lead to a dead end. One creates a library of forgotten facts. The other builds castles in the sky. Confucius diagnosed this precise problem with a razor-sharp, timeless maxim: learning without thought is labor lost, thought without learning is perilous. This is not just a clever saying. It's a warning and an instruction manual. It commands us to forge a single, complete cycle out of these two halves. Learning is the intake, thought is the digestion. You cannot have one without the other and expect to be nourished. The Confucian anchor, the synthesis of knowledge for Confucius' true wisdom, Ji, was never about the volume of what you knew. It was about your ability to synthesize, to find the underlying patterns that connect disparate ideas. This synthesis is the product of reflection. His own teachings in the Analects are not long, systematic lectures. They are often short, provocative ideas meant to be contemplated, chewed on, debated, and integrated by his students. The learning was in the reading, the understanding was in the reflection that followed. To skip this step was the highest form of ignorance, because it mistook the map for the territory. The why, the neuroscience of metacognition, what Confucius called thought, modern cognitive science calls metacognition, the act of thinking about your own thinking. When you consume information, learning, your brain is busy encoding it. But when you pause to reflect, your brain's default mode network activates. This network is not idle, it's a vital mental workshop where your mind connects new ideas to old memories, simulates future applications, and extracts underlying principles. It's the difference between storing a fact and understanding a concept. Reflection is the mental machinery that transforms what into why and how. Without it, learning is indeed labor lost. Your brain has no pathway to make the information useful. Modern, everyday applications. This is about building a mandatory, processing plant for every piece of information you take in. The student cramming for exams. The perilous path, they reread highlighted notes and slides for hours, learning without thought. They feel like they're working hard, but the information vanishes after the test. The Confucian path, after reviewing a chapter for 30 minutes, they close the book and spend 10 minutes writing a brief reflection. What is the core argument of this chapter? What is it? How does it challenge what I learned in the previous module? Why does it matter? How could this be applied to a real-world issue we discussed? Where will I use it? This act of synthesis creates understanding and makes recall effortless. The professional in a workshop. The perilous path. They sit through an all-day leadership seminar, take voluminous notes, and then file them away, never to be seen again. The Confucian path. Before they even leave the room, they take 5 minutes to jot down their 3-line reflection. The key model was situational leadership. What is it? It matters because I tend to use one style with everyone, but my team needs different approaches. Why does it matter? I will use it in my 1:1 with Alex next week by asking more questions instead of giving direct instructions. Where will I use it? This turns a theoretical model into a concrete plan of action. The curious person reading the news. The perilous path. They doom scroll through headlines, absorbing a jumble of anxiety-inducing information that leads to feeling overwhelmed and powerless. The Confucian path. After reading a long-form article on a complex issue, they pause. They reflect. The article explains the supply chain crisis. What is it? It shows how interconnected the global economy is, which is why it affects me. Why does it matter? I can't fix it, but I can be more patient with shortages and support local businesses to build resilience. Where will I use it? This reframes a passive intake of worry into an active, grounded understanding. The toolkit for synthesis. 1. The non-negotiable pause. The rule is simple: no learning session is complete without a reflection session. The ratio can vary: 30 minutes learn/10 minutes reflect, 45/15, but the reflection must happen. 2. The 3-line framework, make this your default template. It forces synthesis and application. Line 1, what summarize the single most important idea in plain language. Line 2, why connect it to something you already know, care about, or are challenged by. Line 3, how commit to one specific, small-scale application in the near future. 3. The reflection journal, keep a dedicated digital or physical notebook only for these reflections. Over time, this does not become a log of what you've learned, it becomes a map of how your mind has grown and how ideas have connected. Pairing study with reflection is the discipline of building a bridge between the island of information and the mainland of your life. It is the essential, non-negotiable step that prevents learning from being labor lost and thought from being perilous speculation. It is the moment you stop being a passive vessel and become an active alchemist, turning the raw ore of information into the gold of wisdom. This is how you ensure that everything you learn doesn't just add to your storage, it adds to your stature. Principle 4, rectify the names. How many meetings have you sat through where everyone was arguing, only to realize halfway through that you weren't even defining the core words the same way? Success, quality, innovation, these are not real things. They are labels, and if our labels are fuzzy, our work will be too. We create mountains of muddled work from molehills of muddled words. Confucius identified this as the root of chaos, both in society and in our own minds. He declared, if names are not correct, language is not in accord with the truth of things. If language is not in accord with the truth of things, affairs cannot be carried on to success. This is perhaps his most powerful and practical idea for the modern world. It's a simple, devastating equation: fuzzy language, fuzzy thinking, failed projects. The Confucian anchor, the doctrine of the rectification of names, Jingming. For Confucius, this wasn't just pedantry. Jingming was a profound moral and social principle. He lived in an era of political chaos where rulers acted not like true rulers but like tyrants, and fathers failed their duties. This disorder, he argued, began with a breakdown of meaning. A ruler who was called righteous but acted selfishly made the word righteousness meaningless. To rectify names meant to ensure that reality matched the label. It meant a leader must live up to the true meaning of leader. It calls for intellectual honesty so rigorous that your language perfectly describes reality. This is the foundation of all trust and effective action. The why, the cognitive psychology of framing, modern psychology and linguistics confirm this. The words we use create frames, mental structures that shape how we understand concepts. The famous, is the glass half empty or half full, experiment isn't just about optimism, it's about how the frame, empty versus full, dictates perception and, consequently, action. If your team frames a problem as a cost, the solution will be about cutting. If they frame it as an investment, the solution will be about growth. You are fighting different battles based on the words you choose. Rectifying names is the deliberate, conscious act of choosing the right frame before you begin. Modern, everyday applications. This is about moving from abstract, emotional debates to concrete, actionable clarity. The startup launching a new product. The muddled path, the team says, we need to create a simple and elegant product that disrupts the market. These words mean different things to the designer: clean UI, the engineer, fewer lines of code, and the marketer, a viral campaign. The result is a disjointed product born of conflicting visions. The Confucian path, before a single line of code is written, the team defines their terms. For us, simple means a user can perform the core task in under 60 seconds on their first try. Elegant means the code is modular and well documented for future developers. Disrupt means we will initially target users frustrated by the current market leader's complexity. Now, every department is aligned against a measurable reality. The couple planning their future. The muddled path, they agree they want a comfortable life and a strong relationship. Years later, they're in conflict because one partner thought comfortable meant financial security through long hours, while the other thought it meant time together and less stress. The Confucian path, they sit down and rectify their names. What does comfortable actually look like? A specific savings account balance? 2 vacations a year? Dinner together 4 nights a week? What does a strong relationship require? Weekly check-ins? Annual getaways? They move from cliché to contract, not with a lawyer, but with shared understanding. the student writing a thesis. The muddled path, they choose a thesis on justice in society. The paper is a vague, meandering mess because the core term, justice, is never defined. The Confucian path, the first chapter is entitled Defining Justice. They rigorously explore and then select a specific framework. For the purposes of this paper, justice will be defined through the lens of John Rawls's theory of distributive justice. This clarity gives the entire paper a solid foundation to build upon. The Toolkit for Intellectual Honesty. 1. The one-page glossary, for any project, meeting, or important conversation, literally start with a blank page titled, Our Definitions. 2. Define the 3 keystones. Key terms, what are the 3 to 5 loaded words we keep using? E.g., quality, fast, sustainable. Define them with observable, measurable criteria. Scope, what are the boundaries of this project? What is explicitly out of scope? This prevents endless feature creep or moving goalposts. Success, what does done and successful look like? Not a feeling, but a metric. We will measure success by a 15% reduction in customer support tickets. 3. That's not what I meant test. If someone says, that's not what I meant, your names were not rectified. Return to the glossary. Rectifying names is the ultimate intellectual hygiene. It is the practice of scrubbing the ambiguity out of your language to reveal the clean structure of reality beneath. It is how you preempt conflict, wasted effort, and misunderstanding. Before you strategize, before you build, before you argue, define. Hold your ideas to the same standard you would hold a ruler. Does the reality of your work live up to the meaning of its name? This is how you ensure your affairs are, as Confucius promised, carried on to success. Principle 5. Investigate things to extend knowledge. We have become experts in secondary knowledge. We are brilliant at reading about, listening to, and watching other people's experiences. But this is like trying to learn about the ocean by studying maps. You might know every current and depth chart, but you have never felt the water, smelled the salt air, or known the terror and awe of a rising wave. We confuse a map of the territory for the territory itself. Confucius's successors in the Confucian tradition codified the remedy for this in the opening lines of The Great Learning, Ge, investigate things to extend knowledge. This is a radical call to action. It states that true knowledge, Ge, is not deposited in you by a teacher or a book. It is extended, reached for, grasped, and grown, through the direct, personal investigation of the world itself. The Confucian anchor, Ge, the phrase, Ge, is dense with meaning. Ge means to investigate, to reach, or even to rectify. Wu is things or phenomena. Ji means to extend or to arrive at. Ji is knowledge or wisdom. So, this isn't passive observation. It is an active, almost physical process of engaging with reality to arrive at understanding. It is the belief that wisdom is embedded in the very fabric of the world, waiting to be unlocked through diligent inquiry. For the Confucian scholar, this wasn't just science, it was a form of reverence. To investigate a tree, a ritual, or a social problem was to understand the underlying moral principles that govern the universe. The why, the experiential learning cycle. Modern pedagogy calls this experiential learning, and it is the single most effective way to create lasting knowledge. Psychologist David Kolb's model outlines it as a cycle: concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, active experimentation. Confucius's axiom hits the first and last steps with breathtaking efficiency. Have a concrete experience, investigate things, to develop new knowledge, extend knowledge. This process builds rich, contextual, and deeply personal neural connections that abstract learning can never match. You're not memorizing a fact, you're living a lesson. Modern, everyday applications. This is about replacing passive consumption with active exploration. The leader reading about empathy. The theoretical path, they read a book on empathetic leadership and agree with its principles. Their behavior doesn't change. The Confucian path, they design a 48-hour micro-experiment. For the next 2 days, in every conversation, I will observe one thing: how often I interrupt versus how often I listen until the person is completely finished. My one metric is the ratio of my interruptions to their complete thoughts. My conclusion will be, What did I learn about my own habits from this direct investigation? The knowledge gained is now personal, undeniable, and transformative. The entrepreneur validating idea. The theoretical path. They build a complete business plan based on market reports and assumptions. They launch and fail, wondering why. The Confucian path. Before writing the plan, they investigate the thing. Their experiment. I will create a one-page landing page describing the product and a notify on launch button. My one metric is the conversion rate of visitors to sign-ups. My one observation will be the feedback from the 3 people who are willing to hop on a call. My conclusion, is there enough real desire to justify building this? They extend their knowledge not from reports, but from reality. The student of history. The theoretical path. They read about the Roman aqueducts and memorize dates and engineers. The Confucian path. They investigate the thing by trying to build a small, working model of an aqueduct using gravity and simple materials. The observation of where the water fails to flow teaches them more about Roman engineering challenges than any textbook could. The knowledge is extended through the fingertips. The toolkit for direct investigation. 1. The 48-hour micro-experiment. This is the key. The time constraint makes it manageable and forces action. The question, what tiny, specific aspect of this concept can I test? The metric, what is one single, measurable piece of data I can collect? E.g., time, frequency, conversion rate. The observation, what is one qualitative thing I will watch for? E.g., my own reaction, someone else's feedback, an unexpected hurdle. The conclusion, what is the one-sentence answer I now have that I didn't have before? 2. Embrace good enough. The goal is not a peer-reviewed study. The goal is a personal, direct encounter with the phenomenon. A rough and ready experiment is worth more than a perfect, unexecuted plan. 3. Document the process. Keep a lab notebook. The log of your experiment, what you did, what happened, what you learned, is where knowledge is solidified. Investigating things is the ultimate antidote to armchair expertise. It is the humility to admit that until you have touched it, you do not truly know it. This principle drags learning out of the library and into the living world. It's messy, surprising, and deeply human. You will learn things no expert could ever tell you, because you will have learned them for yourself. This is how you move from being a student of what is known to an investigator of what is real. You are not just extending your knowledge, you are expanding the map of your own experience. Principle 6, learn from every person. We are hardwired to look for teachers in the obvious places, the expert with the credentials, the best-selling author, the famous thought leader. We operate on a model of trickle-down wisdom, waiting for insight to be handed to us from on high. This is not just limiting, it's a tragic waste of the human ecosystem you are immersed in every single day. Confucius dismantled this entire hierarchy with 9 of the most radical words in the history of learning. When I walk with 2 others, each can be my teacher. Read that again. Each can be my teacher. Not just the wise elder. Not just the accomplished peer. But each. This is a declaration that the world is not divided into teachers and students. It is a classroom where everyone is both. The Confucian anchor, the humility of the Junzi. For Confucius, the mark of the noble person, the Junzi, was not how much they knew, but their limitless capacity to learn. This requires a specific type of humility, not self-deprecation, but a profound lack of arrogance. It is the active understanding that because no one is perfect, everyone possesses a fragment of the puzzle. Someone may excel in one virtue while lacking in another. Your task is not to judge their whole character, but to identify that single point of excellence, that sliver of wisdom, or even that cautionary tale in their failure, and absorb its lesson. This turns every interaction, no matter how mundane, into a potential tutorial. The why, the cognitive diversity advantage. Modern organizational science has proven Confucius right. It has a name for what he described: cognitive diversity, the inclusion of people who think differently and bring different perspectives. Teams with high cognitive diversity solve complex problems faster than homogeneous groups of high IQ experts. Why? Because a single perspective, no matter how brilliant, is a prisoner of its own blind spots. By consciously seeking to learn from people of different ages, backgrounds, experience levels, and worldviews, you are not just being nice, you are manually installing anti-bias software in your own brain. You are giving yourself the ultimate strategic advantage: perspective. Modern, everyday applications. This is about moving from a passive network to an active, curated, personal board of directors. The modern professional. The hierarchical model, they only seek mentorship from someone 2 levels above them in their company. Their learning is limited to one narrow path to success. The Confucian model, they build their tiny council of 3. The elder, a retired professional who has seen industry cycles come and go. They offer perspective on what truly matters over a 40-year career. The peer, a colleague in a completely different department, e.g., an engineer befriending a marketer. They reveal the hidden challenges and priorities of other parts of the business. The junior, a new intern or recent hire. They ask the dumb questions that challenge outdated assumptions and see the system with fresh, critical eyes. Each month, they ask all 3 the same question: what's the biggest opportunity you see that others are missing? The answers form a 3-dimensional picture no single source could provide. The content creator. The isolated model, they study algorithms and analytics in a vacuum, trying to game the system. The Confucian model, they learn from everyone. They study the strength of a viral teen TikToker's editing rhythm. They learn the discipline of a mid-career YouTuber's consistent upload schedule. They absorb the depth of a retired professor's Substack essays. They see faults, too, like the burnout of a creator who chases trends, and learn what to avoid. The parent. The authoritarian model, I am the parent, I am the teacher. The Confucian model, they see their child as a teacher. A toddler teaches them about boundless curiosity and living in the present moment. A teenager teaches them about new cultural currents and offers a brutal, unfiltered lesson in how their words and actions are truly perceived. The parent's role isn't to have all the answers, but to facilitate an environment of mutual learning. The toolkit for ubiquitous learning. 1. Form your tiny council, literally identify your 3, 1 elder, 1 peer, 1 junior. The mere act of categorization forces you to value different perspectives. 2. The monthly question ritual, pose the same, powerful, open-ended question to each member of your council every month. Examples. What's a blind spot you see in our industry/field/community? What's something you used to believe that you've changed your mind about? What's the most valuable lesson you've learned in the last 90 days? 3. Practice strengths and faults analysis. In every interaction, make it a game. Ask, what is one thing this person does exceptionally well that I can imitate? And what is one misstep or lack I can observe and learn to avoid? This reframes even difficult people into invaluable lessons. 4. Carry a lesson log, a small notebook or digital note where you record not just what you learned, but who you learned it from. This reinforces the idea that wisdom is everywhere. Learning from every person is the practice of intellectual democracy. It is the understanding that a PhD does not have a monopoly on insight, and that a janitor might have a PhD. In practicality, it is how you break out of your echo chamber and step into a world rich with lessons waiting to be uncovered. You stop seeing people for their titles, and start seeing them for their teachings. When you do this, you honor the humanity in others by saying, I see something valuable in you, and you empower yourself with a wisdom no single teacher could ever provide. You fulfill Confucius's promise, you ensure that on any path you walk, you will never walk alone, and you will never stop learning. Principle 7, teach to understand. There is a vast, crucial canyon between knowing something and owning it. You can know the steps to a complex theory, the lyrics to a song, or the features of a software. But ownership is different. Ownership is what allows you to adapt it, to argue for it, to rebuild it from memory, and to teach it to someone else. Most of our learning never crosses this canyon. It remains on the far shore, fragile, theoretical, and useless in a crisis. The ancient test for this, famously echoed by everyone from Seneca to Richard Feynman, finds its root in Confucius's method: if you cannot explain it simply, you do not own it. But Confucius didn't just state this, he lived it. His entire pedagogy was built around it. The Confucian anchor, the dialogic method. Confucius did not deliver monolithic lectures. He taught through dialogue, through questioning, challenging, and refining ideas in conversation with his students. A student would present an understanding of a concept, and Confucius would not simply say right or wrong. He would guide them with more questions, forcing them to clarify their thinking, expose their assumptions, and articulate their reasoning with greater precision. In this crucible of conversation, true understanding was forged. For Confucius, teaching wasn't a separate activity from learning, it was the highest and most rigorous form of learning itself. You didn't truly understand a principle until you could use it to enlighten another. The why, the protégé effect, and the Feynman technique. Modern cognitive science has proven this ancient method. It's called the protégé effect. The act of teaching information to someone else forces you to learn it more accurately and deeply yourself. When you have to explain a concept, your brain must organize the information logically. Identify gaps in your own knowledge. Wait, why does that happen? Simplify complex jargon into plain language. Articulate the underlying principles, not just the surface facts. This is the engine behind the famed Feynman technique, a cornerstone of modern learning theory. Confucius was its earliest pioneer. Teaching is the ultimate metacognitive act. It's thinking about your own thinking until it becomes crystal clear. Modern, everyday applications. This is about building a ritual that forces you to cross the canyon from knowledge to ownership. The data analyst. The knowing path. They run a complex regression analysis, get a result, and add it to a report filled with jargon like p-values and r-squared. They understand it, but their stakeholders don't. The owning path. Before writing the report, they are forced to do a 60-second teach-back. They turn to a colleague and say, "Let me explain what I found. Basically, we thought X caused Y. My analysis shows that's probably true, but it's like saying rain causes wet grass. It's true, but so obvious it's not helpful." The real insight is that for our premium customers, it's more like a thunderstorm causes flooding. The effect is far stronger than we knew. To say this, they had to find the core story. The report now writes itself with clarity. The student studying for finals. The knowing path. They reread their notes on the Krebs cycle, memorizing the steps. The owning path. They close the book and explain it to their roommate, a literature major. Okay, imagine a cellular power plant. It doesn't just burn fuel, it recycles the smoke. The Krebs cycle is the super-efficient recycling process that squeezes every last bit of energy out of a sugar molecule. Each step is like a different machine on the assembly line stripping off another piece. If they can make a lit major see it, they own it. The manager implementing a new policy. The knowing path. They forward an email from leadership with the new policy document attached. Please read and comply. The owning path. They call a brief team meeting. Team, let me take 1 minute to explain why this policy is changing. It's not about more rules. It's about fixing a specific client data leak we had last month. This new process is the lock on the door. Here's exactly how it will work for you on a day-to-day basis. By teaching it, they transition from a messenger of rules to a leader of understanding. The toolkit for forced clarity. The weekly 60-second teach-back. This is the non-negotiable ritual. Each week, take one single concept you've learned and explain it to someone in 1 minute or less. Choose your audience wisely. A colleague, for professional concepts. A partner, kid, friend, for broader concepts. Their confused looks are your best feedback. A camera, the most powerful tool. Record yourself. Watch it back. You will instantly hear where you were vague, confusing, or reliant on jargon. Use the "explain it to a beginner" frame. Assume your audience is intelligent but completely new to the topic. This forces you to strip away assumptions and use analogies and simple language. Embrace the "wait, I'm confused" moment. The goal is not to sound smart. The goal is to achieve clarity. If your listener gets confused, that is a gift. It reveals a gap in your understanding you now get to fill. Teaching to understand is the ultimate accountability partner. It is the practice of submitting your knowledge to the friction of explanation. You are not done learning when you pass a test or finish a book. You are done learning when you can become the teacher. This is how you move from having the answers in the back of the book to being the one who can write the book yourself. It is the final, necessary step to true mastery. In the words of the great physicist Frank Oppenheimer, the best way to learn is to teach, the best way to teach is to keep learning. This is the virtuous cycle Confucius ignited, and it remains the most powerful engine for deep understanding ever discovered. Principle 8. Know what you don't know. In a world that rewards confidence and punishes uncertainty, we are trained to hide our gaps. We bluff, we generalize, we speak authoritatively on topics we barely understand. We treat our ignorance like a secret shame to be concealed. This is the path to intellectual stagnation and catastrophic errors in judgment. True growth doesn't begin with what you know, it begins with a clear-eyed, courageous audit of what you don't. Confucius put his finger on the very heart of wisdom with a line that separates the true scholar from the mere know-it-all. To know what you know and to know what you do not know, that is knowledge. This is not a platitude about humility. It is a methodology. It is the operating system for a lifelong learner. The Confucian anchor, the foundation of humility, Qian. For Confucius, intellectual humility, Qian, was not a passive virtue but the active, disciplined practice of self-awareness. It was the first and most important step in the learning process. A person who did not know the limits of their knowledge was not just arrogant, they were unteachable. Their cup was already full. How could anything new be added? By rigorously defining the boundaries of your understanding, you create a map of your own ignorance. And a map, unlike a blank space, can be navigated. It gives your learning direction, purpose, and a destination. This self-knowledge is what Confucius called true knowledge, Ji. The why, the Dunning-Kruger effect and metacognition. Modern psychology illustrates the profound danger Confucius warned against. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. They lack the very metacognitive skill, the ability to think about their own thinking, to accurately assess their performance. Their confidence is high precisely because they are too ignorant to recognize their ignorance. The antidote is exactly what Confucius prescribed, the deliberate practice of metacognition. Knowing what you don't know is the moment you climb off the peak of Mount Stupid and descend into the valley of despair, which is, paradoxically, the beginning of true competence. Your ignorance is no longer a fog, it is a checklist. Modern, everyday applications. This is about systematizing your curiosity and targeting your learning efforts with precision. The project manager. The bluffing path. They agree to lead a project using a new software platform they've never used, assuming they can figure it out as they go. This creates delays, frustration, and technical debt for the entire team. The Confucian path. Before the project begins, they conduct a self-audit. They know they understand project timelines, what they know. They know they don't know the automation features of this new software, what they don't know. They add Learn Software X Automation to their Not Yet list for the quarter. They then proactively find a tutorial or ask an expert for a crash course before they are in crisis mode. Their ignorance becomes their project plan. The marketing director. The bluffing path. They dismiss TikTok as a viable channel for their B2B company without ever investigating it, relying on outdated assumptions. They miss a major demographic shift. The Confucian path. They catch themselves making a snap judgment. They pause and admit, I know traditional LinkedIn advertising. I do not know the B2B thought leadership ecosystem on TikTok. They add, investigate B2B TikTok to their not yet list. This moves them from dismissal to curious inquiry. They might discover it's not right for them, but the decision is now based on knowledge, not ignorance. The new manager. The bluffing path. They feel they need to have all the answers to be respected. They make up policies on the fly or give misguided advice to save face, eroding trust. The Confucian path. They embrace the power of I don't know. When an employee asks a complex question, they say, that's an excellent question. I don't have the full answer for you right now, which means it's something we can learn together. Let me find out and get back to you by tomorrow. This builds more trust than any bluff ever could. It models a growth mindset for the entire team. The toolkit for intellectual self-audit. The Not Yet list. This is your most important document. It is not a list of failures, it is a curriculum for your future. Limit it to 3 to 5 active items per quarter to keep it focused and actionable. Conduct a weekly knowledge audit. Ask yourself, what was a topic this week where I felt out of my depth? Where did I feel the urge to bluff or change the subject? What did someone else know that made me think, I wish I understood that? Practice the phrase, I don't know yet. The word yet is critical. It transforms a dead end into a pathway. Define the closing the gap action for every item on your not yet list. Write the next step. Is it read one article? Schedule 30 minutes with Sarah in accounting. Take an online course module. A gap without a plan is just a wish. Knowing what you don't know is the highest form of self-knowledge. It is the intellectual humility that makes you infinitely teachable. This principle reframes ignorance from being a liability to being your most valuable asset, a compass that always points toward your next area of growth. Your not yet list becomes the agenda for your future success. By defining your ignorance, you destroy it. This is how you ensure you are never led astray by the confidence of a fool, and you never become one yourself. You embrace the words of Socrates, who echoed Confucius, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This is the beginning of all knowledge. Principle 9. Renovate daily. We are addicted to the spectacle of transformation. The 30-day extreme makeover. The radical new system that will change everything. We launch into these grand sprints with immense energy, only to burn out and revert to our old ways, feeling like we've failed. We mistake intensity for consistency and drama for progress. We want to build a new wing on the house in a weekend, and then wonder why the foundation cracks. Confucius offered a quieter, more profound, and ultimately more sustainable path. He advised, if you can one day renovate yourself, do so from day to day. This is not a call for a single, heroic effort. It is a mandate for continuous, incremental refinement. It's the understanding that the self is not a fixed monument, but a living home that requires daily upkeep. The Confucian anchor, the doctrine of daily renewal, re-regime. The full phrase is a powerful mantra of renewal. It is often translated as, if you can one day renovate yourself, do so from day to day. Yes, let it be from day to day. This concept, central to Confucian self-cultivation, frames moral and intellectual progress as a daily ritual, like cleaning a sacred space. It's not about becoming a completely new person overnight. It's about scrubbing away the dust of today's laziness, today's thoughtless words, today's missed opportunities. It is the commitment that tomorrow's version of you will be marginally wiser, kinder, and more effective than today's, not because of a revolution, but because of a daily renovation. The why, the compound effect of marginal gains. The entire modern science of peak performance and habit formation validates this ancient idea. The British cycling team's aggregation of marginal gains philosophy, improving every tiny aspect of their process by 1%, led to dominating Olympic success. Stanford psychologist B.J. Fogg's tiny habits method shows that the most effective way to change is to start with behaviors that are small enough to do even on a bad day. This works because it bypasses our resistance to large, scary changes. A 1% improvement is invisible today, but profound over a year. Confucius's daily renovation is the original aggregation of marginal gains for the character. It is the compound interest of self-improvement. Modern, everyday applications. This is about replacing the boom and bust cycle of transformation with the steady rhythm of maintenance and upgrade. The aspiring writer. The spectacle method. This weekend, I will lock myself away and write an entire chapter. They do it, are exhausted, and don't write again for a month. The renovation method. Each night, their reflection is, tried, I wrote for 15 minutes today. Learned, I write best right after my coffee, not in the evening. Tweak, tomorrow, I will protect that 15-minute post-coffee slot and turn my phone off. They aren't writing a chapter, they are renovating their writing process. The chapters become the natural output. The manager trying to be more patient. The spectacle method. They declare, I will never get angry in a meeting again. They inevitably do, and feel they've failed the entire goal. The renovation method. Their nightly audit. Tried, I noticed myself getting frustrated in the budget meeting. Learned, I clench my jaw first. That's my early warning sign. Tweak, tomorrow, if I feel my jaw clench, I will take one deep breath before speaking. They aren't trying to eliminate impatience, they are renovating their response to it, one tiny trigger at a time. The student learning a language. The spectacle method. They cram 200 vocabulary words over a weekend, then remember none of them. The renovation method. Their daily practice. Tried, I did my 15 minutes of Duolingo and tried to name 3 things in my kitchen. Learned, I remember words better when I say them out loud. Tweak, tomorrow, I will say the new words aloud as I practice. They aren't trying to become fluent, they are renovating their daily practice to be 1% more effective. The toolkit for continuous refinement. The nightly 3-line audit. This is the non-negotiable ritual. Take 2 minutes before bed to answer. What is one thing I tried? Acknowledge the effort, no matter how small. What is one thing I learned? What did this teach me about the process, myself, or the subject? What is one tweak I will make tomorrow? Based on that learning, what is one microscopic adjustment? Focus on process, not outcomes. Your goal is not lose 10 pounds. Your goal is to renovate my lunch choice daily. The outcome becomes the inevitable byproduct of a better process. Embrace the 1% upgrade. Ask not, how do I fix this completely, but how do I make this 1% better today? This makes progress feel effortless and sustainable. Track your tweaks. Keep a simple log of your daily tweak. Over time, you'll see a powerful narrative of cumulative improvement that is far more motivating than any single grand gesture. Renovating daily is the ultimate rejection of the myth of the overnight success. It is the humble, powerful acknowledgement that greatness is not a genetic gift, it is a daily ritual. It is how you build a life of continuous, quiet growth that never depends on motivation, only on a simple, repeatable system. You are not trying to summit a mountain in a single bound. You are simply ensuring that each day, you climb a few more feet than the day before. And as Confucius promised, if you can renovate yourself one day, you have the blueprint to do it every day. And that is how you change everything. Principle 10. Join knowledge with conduct. We have reached the final, and most important, step. Everything we've discussed, the practice, the reflection, the investigation, the teaching, is ultimately meaningless if it remains locked inside your head. The world is littered with brilliant theorists, eloquent speakers, and people with impeccable intentions whose lives show no evidence of their learning. They are like architects who never build, or navigators who never sail. They know the path, but they do not walk it. Confucius drew a razor-sharp distinction between this kind of hollow knowledge and true wisdom. He said, "The superior man is modest in speech, but exceeds in action." This is the ultimate test. Not what you can say, but what you can do. Not your vocabulary, but your conduct. Learning is not proved by a certificate on a wall, it is proved in the daily grammar of your behavior. The Confucian anchor, the unity of knowledge and action, Jixinghai. While the phrase, unity of knowledge and action, is most associated with the later Neo-Confucian philosopher Wang Yangming, the principle is deeply rooted in Confucius's teachings. For Confucius, true understanding was inherently practical. To know what is right and not to do it was not just a failure of will, it was the deepest form of ignorance. Virtue was not an abstract concept to be debated, it was a concrete reality to be lived. The Junzi, the noble person, was identifiable not by their eloquent speeches, but by their actions, their respect for elders, their integrity in business, their loyalty to friends. Their conduct was the living embodiment of their knowledge. Speech was silver, but action was gold. The why, the psychology of self-perception and identity. Modern psychology provides a fascinating lens for this. The self-perception theory suggests that we derive our attitudes and beliefs from observing our own behavior. In simple terms, you are what you do. If you act with patience, you become a patient person. If you act courageously, you become courageous. Conversely, if you only talk about patience or courage, you reinforce an identity of someone who talks but does not act. Joining knowledge with conduct is the process of literally building your character through action. It closes the loop, turning abstract learning into a tangible part of who you are. It's how a belief becomes a conviction. Modern, everyday applications. This is about moving from the internal world of understanding to the external world of evidence. The leadership coach. The theoretical path. They teach workshops on vulnerability and trust, but never share their own mistakes or uncertainties with their team. Their teaching feels hypocritical and fails to land. The Confucian path. They practice what they preach. After teaching the principle, their visible action for the week is to start their next team meeting by sharing a recent professional mistake and what they learned from it. This single action does more to build trust than 100 workshops. Their knowledge is now conduct. The environmentalist. The theoretical path. They share alarming articles about climate change on social media while ordering single-use plastics daily and using Uber for every short trip. The Confucian path, they commit to joining knowledge with conduct. Their visible action is to carry a reusable water bottle and coffee cup everywhere for 1 month. Then, they add taking public transportation twice a week. Their small, consistent actions align their behavior with their beliefs, transforming them from a commentator into a living example. The parent reading about child development. The theoretical path, they underline passages in a book about emotional validation, but still dismiss their child's frustrations with "you're fine" or "stop crying." The Confucian path, they choose one principle. Their visible action is that for 1 week, when their child is upset, they will first get down on their knee, make eye contact, and say, "I see you're feeling really upset. It's okay to feel that way." This action, though small, is a tectonic shift in the relationship. The knowledge has become conduct. The toolkit for embodied learning. The weekly conduct challenge. Each week, review the principles you've learned. Select one. Not to study more, but to enact. Define the visible action. Ask, what is one specific, observable thing I can do this week to turn this principle into conduct? Not, be more patient. Invisible. But, I will wait 5 seconds after someone finishes speaking before I respond. Visible. Seek an audience, optional but powerful. Tell someone what you're doing. This week, I'm working on putting knowledge into action by doing X. This creates accountability and shows others that learning is a verb. Reflect on the impact. At the week's end, ask, how did that action change the outcome? How did it make me feel? How did others respond? This completes the cycle, turning conduct into deeper knowledge. Joining knowledge with conduct is the final, master habit that makes all the others real. It is the point of the entire Confucian project. This is how you ensure your learning has not been for your benefit alone, but for the benefit of everyone you interact with. Your life becomes your thesis. Your actions become your argument. You are no longer a student of philosophy, you are a philosopher. You are no longer a person who knows about virtue, you are a person who embodies it. This is the end of learning and the beginning of wisdom. Let your deeds outrun your words. For Confucius, the true test of knowledge was never in the scrolls one could quote, but in the character one could build. It was a lifelong practice of uniting knowledge and action. To know the good was nothing, to do the good was everything. These 10 habits are not a checklist to finish. They are a compass for a lifetime. They ask a simple, profound question: will you merely learn about your life, or will you actively, deliberately, and gracefully live it? The choice is yours. But you do not have to make it alone. Here is my challenge to you. Do not try to change everything at once. That is the way of burnout. Choose one habit. Just one. The one that whispered to you during this video. For the next 7 days, let it be your gentle guide. Let it be the lens through which you see your work, your conversations, your quiet moments. Then, I want you to do 2 things that transform learning from a solitary act into a shared journey. First, come down to the comments. Not just to name the habit you've chosen, but to tell us one small, specific way you will put it into action tomorrow. Your commitment inspires others to make their own. Second, pay it forward. Share this video with one person in your life whose journey would be lighter with this map. Send it to a mentor who embodies this wisdom, or to a friend who is desperately searching for it. Let them know you're walking this path, too. If this ancient approach to modern growth resonated with you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Remember, the greatest masterpiece you will ever work on is yourself. Review the old. Apply the new. Renovate daily. Go live what you've learned. We'll see you on the path.